When I was in 8th grade, I had a falling out with a girl in my friend group, and the rest of my friends turned on me. Isolated and alienated, I felt completely alone. Exclusion escalated into bullying, and I became a target. The same girls who had once consoled me became the source of my pain. In fear of becoming the next victim, friends failed to defend me, and bystanders even joined in. Unfortunately, this continued on to high school, and soon enough, the dirty looks turned into words, and the words turned into actions. I walked the halls with my head down and ignored the cruel comments. The harassment didn't end when I exited the school building. Through social media, the torture followed me home. I heard negative words in reference to myself so often that I started to believe them to be true. As the torment continued, my spirit deteriorated and I became depressed. I felt worthless. I felt like no one cared about me. But in those dark days, I stopped caring about myself. My self-esteem declined. The bullying became standard, and I became emotionally numb. I distanced myself from my family and all of the activities I loved. I stopped taking care of myself. I couldn't find motivation for anything. I lost sight of who I was and who I wanted to be. I thought, maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong here. In this time of desperation, I just wanted it all to end. I stared at a bottle of pills and contemplated. Who would care if I was gone? Would anyone? No. No one would care if I was gone. And then I did it. I was surprised and disappointed when I woke up the next day. The last thing that I wanted to do was go to school. Of course, my parents forced me. When I got to school, I was called down to the guidance office because one of my teachers had reported concern for my well-being. I was honest with the counselor about my suicidal intentions. She followed proper precaution procedures, and by lunchtime, there was a hospital band around my wrist. I sat in the stark, white, barren hospital room answering countless questions from a parade of doctors. My parents were by my side the entire time. I read the agony in my parents' eyes. I saw the deep fear and concern in the creases above their brow. But so much more than that, I felt their eternal love for me. I was overwhelmed with guilt and hope. All this time, I was being so careless, never considering how much my family and parents loved me. I had stopped taking care of myself, but the love from my parents gave me hope for recovery. My parents did anything and everything to make sure I got better. When the doctors finally left the room, my father turned to me and asked how I would feel about going to a new private school, Immaculata. For the first time in 2 years, I felt optimistic. I never went back to the public school after that day, but I'll never forget the experiences that have made me the strong person that I am now. I was much further out than you thought, and not waving but drowning. This is a line from my favorite poem by Stevie Smith. This poem gives an account of a drowned man whose distressed thrashing in the water is mistaken for waving. The people on land wave back, and the distress signals go unnoticed. When I was drowning, my teacher noticed my distress and helped me keep my head above water until my parents came to rescue me. I reestablished self-care mechanisms to help me float when the waters get rough. Through exercising, therapy, and indulging in my passions, I can swim to the shore. The unconditional love given by my family and friends was a huge part of my recovery. My emotional scars have faded as I've learned to love myself, regardless of the opinion of others. Immaculata High School bred compassionate, empathetic, and caring kids who became my family. I was suddenly surrounded by friends who didn't judge me, but rather friends who cared about me, which empowered me to prioritize taking care of myself. Slowly, I returned to doing the things I loved. I started singing again, I joined the cheerleading team, got involved in campus ministry. All of these activities helped me stay afloat through a difficult time. There was one special soul from Immaculata who I was fortunate enough to experience college with. Connor Mullen was in my homeroom all of high school. I remember our excitement when we realized we both accepted admittance to the University of Delaware. After 4 years of adjacent lockers, it seemed too coincidental that Connor was placed in the same dorm building as me. I was so happy, I didn't even care that we were going to live in the decrepit Rodney building with no air conditioning. Connor was unlike anyone I had ever met. He was a complex thinker and an analytical observer. He had a heart of gold. He was nice to everyone. His empathy was so inspiring and contagious. He was a friend to anyone who needed one. Connor instilled hope and supported so many people struggling with mental illnesses, but Connor's kind character masked the magnitude of the pain he was experiencing inside. Little did I know, Connor, too, was drowning. Living in a college environment can be physically, emotionally, and most importantly, mentally exhausting. The culture normalizes unhealthy, risky behavior and downplays the impact of stress. Yes, I'm talking about partying, but I'm also talking about not sleeping for extended periods of time because you're studying in the library. I'm talking about skipping meals because of a busy schedule. I'm talking about feeling extremely overwhelmed and like you're the only person who can't handle the pressure. Each college student takes on an unprecedented amount of stress and responsibilities, and adjusting to these new expectations is far from easy. College is the first time many are on their own, away from home, and it can feel like you're lost out at sea. When we are trying to swim, sometimes we forget to check on ourselves and others. Although many of us were unaware, my friend Connor struggled with anxiety and depression since he was 15 years old. Connor struggled to find treatment in silence. His mother tried to help from afar, but due to stigma, Connor felt embarrassed about his mental health issues, and the magnitude of his illness went undetected, even to the people who loved him the most. What me and his friends believed was typical college party behavior, we know now was a desperate attempt to self-medicate. Connor's friends and I thought he was waving, but he was treading heavily, struggling to stay afloat. On September 25th, 2016, I boarded the bus after an incredible day at Oktoberfest in Munich, Germany. It was junior year of college. I was studying abroad for the semester when I received shocking news. Someone I barely know called me and told me that Connor Mullen had taken his life on Choate Street. It seemed like an unbelievable rumor. I immediately told her, "That's definitely not true. I'll find out the real story." As my calls to close friends were declined and followed by texts saying, "Too upset, I don't want to talk right now," I realized this nightmare was a reality. In a blink of an eye, I was on a plane back home to the States for the services. Connor's death was a tsunami in the ocean of everyone I knew. I saw how Connor's life and shocking death impacted everyone from high school and everyone from college. In a painful blur, the services happened and ended, and suddenly I was on a plane back to Europe, where I grieved across the ocean for my support system. I could not believe that my friend was gone. I could not believe that my strong, seemingly happy friend felt so alone. I couldn't remember the last time I saw him before I left. I felt so guilty that I didn't stay in touch with him when I was away. I never truly asked him how he was feeling or knew that he was drowning. It didn't seem fair to swim on without him, feeling as though I could have rescued him if I had the chance. It took me almost 2 years to overcome the waves of guilt, and only recently have I been able to fathom Connor's death. Now I'm focusing on interpreting Connor's life and what we must learn from it. We realize there are elements of a college environment that fundamentally breed stigma and delay treatment. We learned that in general, university campuses provide physical healthcare options, but mental health care lacked in quantity and quality. If you break your arm at 3 a.m., you can go to the student health center. But if your brain, the central console of the human body, is malfunctioning, where do you go? We discovered that hundreds of students were drowning from mental health issues, and hundreds of friends want to help but don't know how. We decided to start a wave to put mental health on the map. We created a student group called Friends for Friends, which aims to improve the accessibility, quality, and quantity of mental health resources at UD. Friends for Friends emphasizes the important role that friendship plays in mental health recovery. Through bystander intervention, you can help a friend or even a stranger experiencing a mental health issue. In April of 2018, we held our first annual Friends for Friends Fest. F for F Fest was a mental health festival that included a keynote speaker, student speakers, and a wellness fair to showcase local mental health resources. We wanted to not only encourage students to get help and help their friends, but we wanted to show them how they can get help while at UD. The impact was far beyond our expectations. Although the founding team and me graduated in May, hundreds of UD students have continued the F for F legacy at UD, and the organization is rapidly growing. Friends for Friends held their second annual Friends for Friends Fest last weekend, and more than 2,000 students were in attendance. The positive response speaks to the widespread impact of this issue. Mental health issues affect everyone. In April of my senior year of college, I took a mental health first aid course. Just as CPR helps you assist an individual having a heart attack, mental health first aid helps you assist someone experiencing a mental health issue or crisis. Mental health first aid is the initial help provided to someone experiencing mental health issues and serves as a catalyst for further treatment. Mental health first aid teaches students to identify when someone is drowning and how to initiate that rescue. I was so inspired by the course that I decided to become an instructor. After graduation, I applied and was accepted into the National Council for Behavioral Health Mental Health First Aid Instructor Program in Washington, D.C. Since my certification in September, I have trained more than 50 students at the University of Delaware. These trainings were sponsored by Friends for Friends. Word has been spreading and staff and students alike have been asking for the training. It turns out that teaching mental health first aid is a big part of my own self-care. Connor's death was not in vain. We will not drown in sorrow, but rather we will wave others towards help. When you feel like you're drowning, self-care will help you float, rescue others, and swim through stressful waters to relief. Self-care, friendship, and love can save a life. I am living proof. Thank you.